Boogie is the story of Alfred Boogie Chin, a basketball phenom living in Flushing, Queens, aka the best Chinatown in New York City, who dreams of one day playing in the NBA. It was written and directed by our next guest, chef, host, and author Eddie Huang. His 2013 memoir, Fresh Off the Boat, was adapted as the 2015 sitcom of the same name. Eddie, thank you so much for joining us.
What's up? Thank you for having me.
Eddie, obviously storytelling has been such a part of your career, telling stories through food, telling stories through your memoir, and now you've written and directed a movie. Tell us about the inspiration for Boogie.
Yeah, no, the inspiration for Boogie really is when I was 17, I watched Good Will Hunting. And I grew up in a family with quite a bit of violence and wasn't able to talk about it. And, you know, if police came or social services came, I just wouldn't say anything. I would lie. And when I was 17, I was at my aunt's house and I watched Good Will Hunting. And it was the first time I had seen anybody speak openly and honestly about domestic violence in a way that I could connect with. And I said to myself in that moment as a 17-year-old, I would love to make a movie. I would love to write it. I would love to direct it. And I would love to make something so that another kid at that age will be able to watch it and feel less alone. Because that movie really changed my life. That movie made me feel like I could speak about things. And I think I've been speaking very loudly ever since then.
No, so you knew you wanted to make a movie, but you went into sports and you made a sports movie. There's a lot of sports movies out here. I'm just curious, why basketball, the sport you chose to have the story of your main character, Boogie, be in? Like, why did you choose that avenue?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, for me, basketball was my way to experience America. It holds a very special place in my heart. I lived in a very traditional Taiwanese Chinese home, and you know, like we didn't even speak English in the house much, and everything we did, it felt like we weren't even in America. But when I stepped outside, you know, on the driveway, I played ball with my dad and played ball with the kids in the neighborhood. That felt American to me, and that was my way to make friends and connect with other cultures and see how we approach things differently. And also because, you know, Asian American men are, you know, many times emasculated in this culture. We're not expected to be good at anything physical. So I felt like setting that challenge up and landing this story in the world of basketball was really the only option. Like, I can't see it being anything else. Perhaps boxing, but basketball really is more universal, and it's a bit of a team game.
Boogie, like yourself, is growing up in a traditional household. He says at one point that he feels like he's got, 5,000 years of culture running through him, and it's you've espoused the same sentiment. Do you feel that way whenever you work on something that's authentic to your background, that you've got like all this history that's coursing through you?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I really do feel connected to my parents and grandparents and ancestors, and also that I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I still read like 5th century Chinese philosophy. I'll also read modern writers like Ha Jin, and I do think it's quite important to have a historical context to what you do and stay at least emotionally connected. I don't think, to me, it's about the facts or shouting things out in that way, but it's to have that emotional connection, because we are all so much more similar than we are different. And then I also do feel like we're all telling the same stories in every generation.
A lot of Boogie's, struggle is balancing that traditional upbringing with an American style, with trying to integrate with American culture. What was that like for you, trying to balance that?
It was difficult. It's very difficult because you have your family's expectations and you don't want to let them down. And it almost feels like death to let your parents down. But I started to understand you only get one life in this body, in this moment. And while I do have a responsibility to my parents, my culture, there's a responsibility to myself as well. And I would seek out culture, I would seek out communities that were interesting to me, or I felt were looking at the world from a different angle and had a different type of wisdom or knowledge to impart on the world and myself. And I didn't stop myself. I wasn't like, oh, my parents will be disappointed. My parents don't like me going to this neighborhood. My parents don't like me interested in like this type of culture or music. I really think it's important to engage all of America and participate in this experiment.
So you actually talked about reaching out to different cultures and tapping into all kinds of different ones. And Pop Smoke had a great performance as Monk in your film, and rest in peace to Pop Smoke. He passed away last February before this film came out. But what was that experience? What has that experience been like for you? You were directing the film and he was acting in it, and now seeing the performance in the final cut. Just what was that like?
It's pretty hard to capture on a podcast and tell you. It's a complicated feeling. There's a lot of joy for Pop for his performance. There's a lot of joy in seeing other people respond to him and see how talented he is. And there's a lot of responsibility in kind of presenting his final work in a lot of ways. And then there's just like sadness because he's not here. So it's complicated.
Eddie, your memoir, Fresh Off the Boat, was, as we noted above, turned into the ABC sitcom of the same name. You've been really outspoken about Asian representation. I think for a lot of Asian Americans, for myself included, you represent Asian representation to a lot of people. Fresh Off the Boat was a real turning point in TV in terms of representing Asians on television. What do you feel the state of Asian representation in film and TV is now, and where do you see it going?
I think it's growing. I think it's changing. I think there's money to be made in it. And anytime there's money to be made in something, you need to be careful about who you're allowing to make that money and who you're supporting in making that money. I think it's quite easy to see the people who were 10 toes down from day one, the ones that are speaking from an honest place, that are being vulnerable, that are taking on the actual responsibility and duty of representing your community and talking about the things that are difficult. And then there's the people that are kind of just selling their skin. And, you have that in every group. You have that in every movement. And I try not to pay as much attention to it. I just kind of continue to make time and space in my heart and mind for the people that I think are being real, even if I disagree with them, and like, for instance, Andrew Yang, I really didn't like his article last year talking about, oh, we need to be more American. We should like wear red, white, and blue. And I was like, look, that was a pretty ridiculous article and a pretty ridiculous solution. But I think at the heart of it, Andrew Yang, I knew exactly what he was trying to say.
Right.
I wasn't sold on Andrew Yang being the messenger. I also felt like Andrew Yang at the time when he was running was like running on a very economic platform. And I was like, look, man, of course you're Asian. Of course you're going to come from this economic perspective. But like, you should think about what others expect from you. And at times preempt that. Like maybe you should have done a little bit more work with the Black, Latino, gay community, women community. Do you know what I mean? Like the Asian community is very, very small. Our perspective represents a small group of people in this country. And while I think it's a potent one and it's a powerful, necessary perspective, I hope that Asians in America include others in our movement. I'm very inspired by the Caribbean. A lot of Asians were sent to work on the Panama Canal. Chinese people, Indian people, Black people. The Black people were slaves. They were dragged there, against their own will. The Asians were coolies, and in many ways they were slaves or indentured servants. But you see in the Caribbean how Black, Latino, indigenous, Taino, and South Asian people have lived amongst each other for quite some time. And you have wonderful quotes from Trinidad, quotes from Jamaica. You know, we're all on the money. You know, when you look at Jamaican money, you see indigenous people, Black people, Indian, Chinese people, and it's, you know, out of many, one people. And when Americans are like, I don't know how this is going to work out. I don't know how we're ever going to get along. I'm like, you know, it's actually happened in many other places, you know. And one of my favorite Easter eggs in our film is the Mr. Chin song. And the movie starts in a very, very traditional Asian way. It's my mother is the fortune teller, and you're reading the fortune. And after the title sequence, going through Flushing, you land in a town car with two like Asian uncles that are very street cultural, clearly influenced by Black culture and inspired by it. And they're listening to Mr. Chin by Yellow Man, who is an albino dancehall artist, complaining about the way Chinese shopkeepers treated him in Jamaica, you know? And I love it. I love that song. I love that interaction. I think it's totally fine to complain about Chinese shopkeepers or Korean shopkeepers. I mean, we have a tendency to go into other people's impoverished neighborhoods and sell them fucking drinks that are give them diabetes. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, this is what we've done. So it's great that somebody from the Jamaican community speaks back. And it's a conversation. It's important to have conversation. It's important to bring these things up. And it's important to show that, like, at any moment in time, you can be the dominant culture or you can be the oppressed. And it doesn't matter what color your skin is. It's anyone with power can end up a terrible white person. You know? And so I try to have moments like that in my films, which aren't so like, it's just about Asians. Because, I mean, the world is really big and we're all so much more similar than we are different.
No, and that's it. That's exactly it. And you have such a unique perspective on just everything. The Caribbeans, I love that, because as you were explaining it, I could start to see it, you know, just knowing different people that are a part of the Caribbean culture. So what other stories are you hoping to tackle in the future, in your future projects, to bring to life?
Oh, it's a great question. You know, I wrote this story called Tuna Melt that it takes place in LA, and it's about a hitman who, you know, he's like in the scene, you know, because like I know gangsters that are in the scene. I know street dudes, and we all know what they do. You know, coke dealers that are in the scene. And it's like, yo, we all know your job. You never gone to jail. You're good. You get to practice your quote unquote craft. And you're at every party and everybody knows what you do. And I was like, I think that's a pretty interesting existence. And then I also felt like, remember Prison Bay? When everyone saw that like convict's photo, and it's like, oh my God, what a hot convict.
Yeah.
And he became like a model when he got out of jail. I was like, I love this trajectory for somebody's career. And I love this concept of morality where it's like, when you're not hot and you're not cool, we want to throw you in jail. But if you are hot and you are cool, I'd love to have your baby. You know what I mean? And so Tuna Melt is very much about a character who had a very, very traumatic incident in his childhood that drove him towards a violent life as a hitman. But he's actually a very charming, attractive guy who people in the scene love and think is cool. And he's like, could I be Prison Bay? And it's kind of like in the middle of his hits and in the middle of his jobs, he's like contemplating his next step and his future and how he's going to parlay. And it's also a commentary on like our world with social media and brands. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone's like, oh, what's my next move? What am I going to be next? And so it's a movie about all those things. But at the end of the day, Renee, I love your question. I'm just interested in character. You know, I read Mark Twain's autobiography as a kid, and he said, every single character I write is somebody I actually know. And every character I write is based on somebody I know or something I've done. And I get obsessed with like a person or a character, and then I build a world around them. And that's what happens.
Finally, you're a Knicks fan. The Knicks are pretty good this year. How you feeling about it? how you feeling about the team this year?
I feel great. I feel great. I feel wonderful about the Knicks. We've blown 2 games to the Sixers for no goddamn good reason. The refs are a big part of it.
Refs.
But I also think
refs,
Julius, since he became an all-star, is like he got a little battery in his back and he's like arguing with refs more. And I think I love Julius. He's the man. But he needs to just focus on the game. RJ is playing a lot better since Boogie came out. You know, I was complaining about RJ because RJ had no jumper until March this year, but he's hitting. I love that Tibbs is sometimes starting Burks over Reggie Bullock, which I think we need to do more of. And I mean, when Derrick Rose comes back, I think we're a much different team. You know, like we need Derrick Rose back. That means quickly as a flamethrower off the bench. I would like to see us make a move, though. You know, I think we could use more shooting.
Who are you thinking?
Shooting.
Bradley Beal. Who you think? Who would you like to see there?
I love Bradley Beal. I would love Bradley Beal. Every trade deadline, I feel every team should inquire about CJ McCollum because eventually the Trailblazers are going to have to do the right thing and blow that team up. And it's because him and Dame duplicate each other. And they're both phenomenal, but like I'm a big just call and see what's up with CJ like every year, and then Buddy Hield's hanging out there in Sacramento.
Yeah, Buddy Hield.
They not doing shit, and I like Buddy, so I would call about Buddy Hield because we need shooting, you know.
What about anybody from the Houston Rockets?
Yeah, I like the Rockets. You know, the Rockets got dudes, but. You know, Eric Gordon's a good player.
There's
but,
a good
you know,
one.
John Wall's contract is ridiculous.
True.
You don't want that. Oladipo, I don't know. Oladipo's always hurt. Like, I don't believe in his knee. I love Oladipo as a person, but, like, I don't want to max out Oladipo. I think Oladipo wants a lot of money, and I think Oladipo wants to be in Miami.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah.
For me, it's Eric Gordon is a guy like Eric. You know, Eric Gordon showed up in more games in the playoffs than James Harden did at times. You know, like when the Rockets had their backs against the wall, Eric Gordon had them big game 6s, big game 7s. James Harden just he was looking he wanted off the court.
Lou Dort had him in handcuffs.
Eric Gordon is a baller for sure. He's a baller.
Yes.
Yeah, I like Eric. Yeah, I like those underrated guys. I don't want us to like sell the farm because I think our better years are ahead of us. But I think a nice little playoff run. I think if we get one piece at the 2 or the 3 shooting that can play defense, I think we could win a first round series. Get these guys some experience. So I would like to do that. And we got the Mavs pick next year, so hopefully, like, you know, the Mavs. I hope Luka just kind of tanks.
I love it.
I need the Mavs to lose more than anything.
Absolutely. Eddie, thanks for joining us. Boogie in theaters
Eddie.
now. Please go see it. Eddie, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care. Thank you for having me.